The attack began exactly 3 hours and 0 minutes after Ambassador Daeho Kim's death with synchronized precision that stunned military observers across the galaxy. Human forces struck 17 Vorthak star systems simultaneously, using tactics that no alien species had ever witnessed before. What the purple-scaled warriors had mistaken for scattered merchant traffic revealed itself as the largest coordinated assault in known history. Colonel Jae-hyun Park led the first wave against Vorthak Prime orbital defenses from his position in the asteroid belt, surrounding the alien home world. His stealth destroyers had been hiding among the space rocks for 4 months, disguised as automated mining operations. When they dropped their camouflage systems and opened fire, the massive defense platforms that protected the planet crumbled within minutes under concentrated plasma bombardment. The Vorthak fleet commanders woke from sleep to alarm signals screaming throughout their command centers. Admiral Vex rushed to his battleship bridge wearing only his sleeping robes and found his sensors showing impossible readings. Hundreds of human warships were materializing from empty space around his defensive positions. Ships that should have taken days to reach Vorthak territory had somehow appeared overnight ready for immediate combat. Captain Bo-young Kim commanded a heavy cruiser that had been masquerading as a deep space research vessel for 8 months. Her crew had been conducting fake scientific experiments while actually mapping alien patrol routes and defense patterns. When the attack signal came through encrypted channels, her ship weapon systems activated and revealed firepower that could crack planets. The nearby Vorthak patrol ships never had time to send distress calls before being vaporized. On the surface of Vorthak Colony, World's human ground forces emerged from underground bunkers and hidden facilities they had been constructing for years. Sergeant Yoo-jin Lee led her squad through the streets of New Thrak City, moving toward military targets with practiced efficiency. They had rehearsed this assault scenario dozens of times, using detailed maps and building plans gathered by reconnaissance teams. The Vorthak soldiers defending the city were caught completely unprepared for ground combat on their own territory. They had never imagined that humans possessed the capability to land forces so deep in alien space. Their weapons training focused on fighting other Vorthak armies, not dealing with small, highly mobile human units that struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Yoo-jin team reached their primary target, the Planetary Communications Center, without encountering serious resistance. The alien guards were still trying to understand why their orbital defenses had gone silent when human soldiers appeared at their gates. The brief firefight ended with Vorthak forces surrendering after realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned by an enemy they had considered inferior. Similar scenes played out across dozens of Vorthak worlds as human assault teams captured critical infrastructure with surgical precision. Power plants fell silent as their control systems were overridden by human hackers. Transportation networks ground to a halt when key bridges and tunnels were destroyed. Government buildings were surrounded and their occupants forced to surrender without causing civilian casualties. The Vorthak military tried desperately to coordinate their response, but found their communication networks completely compromised. Dr. Young-soo Kim's cyber warfare programs activated throughout alien computer systems, causing massive failures and data corruption. Navigation computers led ships into asteroid fields. Supply databases reported empty warehouses as fully stocked. Even simple message systems began transmitting gibberish instead of coherent orders. Fleet Admiral Won-jae Kim watched the tactical displays from his flagship as Vorthak forces crumbled under coordinated assault. Enemy ships that managed to reach combat zones found themselves facing human vessels with superior technology and firepower. The aliens had focused on building bigger, stronger warships, while humans had developed smarter, more efficient designs that could outmaneuver and outfight anything the galaxy had seen. Captain Sang-min Park led a squadron of human fighters against a Vorthak carrier group that was trying to escape the Kepler system. The alien pilots were skilled warriors, but they flew predictable attack patterns that human tactical computers could counter easily. Within 20 minutes, the entire enemy formation was destroyed with minimal losses to Earth forces. The survivors would spread word of human military capabilities to any aliens willing to listen. General Thex found himself trapped on Station Omega. 7 as human Marines surrounded the facility and cut off all escape routes. Commander Sang-Hoon Lee offered the alien general one final chance to surrender peacefully and face trial for his war crimes. The proud Vorthak warrior chose to fight instead, believing his superior size and strength would overcome human soldiers. The battle in the station corridors was brief and decisive. Thex had killed Ambassador Kim with a single plasma shot, believing that brute force could solve any problem. He learned too late that human soldiers fought with intelligence and teamwork rather than relying on individual strength. His body fell in the same chamber where he had murdered the human diplomat exactly 4 hours earlier. Across Vorthak space, the alien empire was collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. Their military leaders had prepared for traditional warfare between large fleets and armies. They were completely unprepared for the coordinated multi-dimensional assault that targeted every aspect of their civilization simultaneously. Human forces struck from space-land cyberspace and even from within their own territories. The remaining Vorthak commanders attempted to rally their forces around the heavily fortified Zerion system, but found their retreat routes blocked by human ships that had somehow anticipated their movements. Every escape plan they tried had already been countered by Earth forces that seemed to know their tactical doctrines better than they did themselves. The aliens were trapped in a carefully constructed net with no way to break free. Captain Hae Young, Sun led the assault on the Zerion defense stations using gravity bombs that created localized space-time distortions. The massive alien fortifications that had protected Vorthak space for centuries were crushed like empty containers under the impossible physics of human weapons technology. Defensive systems that could withstand planet-killing asteroids simply ceased to exist when reality itself was weaponized against them. News of the ongoing battles reached other galactic civilizations through refugee ships and emergency transmissions from Vorthak territory. Species that had feared the purple-scaled warriors for generations watched in amazement as humanity dismantled their empire with clinical precision. The humans were not seeking conquest or territory. They were methodically destroying every aspect of Vorthak military power while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. The Krulon Empire and Zentari Federation immediately began reviewing their own military preparations and diplomatic relations with Earth. If humans could destroy the mighty Vorthak forces so easily, what did that say about everyone else's security in the galaxy? The peaceful species that had seemed content with their small corner of space suddenly revealed capabilities that surpassed anything other civilizations possessed. Within 18 hours of the first attack, the Vorthak Empire effectively ceased to exist as a military force. Their fleets were scattered or destroyed, their colonies were occupied, and their government was in hiding somewhere in the Outer Rim territories. General Thex's decision to murder a human diplomat had triggered the most devastating military defeat in recorded galactic history. Admiral Hye-Jin Seo stood in the Deep Space Command Center, watching status reports flow in from across former Vorthak territory. Every major military target had been captured or neutralized with minimal human casualties. The operation had succeeded beyond all expectations thanks to years of careful planning and the enemy complete underestimation of Earth capabilities. The galaxy would never be the same after witnessing humanity's true military power. The species that preferred peace and diplomacy had proven they possessed the means to wage total war when their hand was forced. Every alien government would need to reconsider their assumptions about human nature and capabilities. Earth had earned its place among the great powers through strength rather than submission. Ambassador Dae-ho Kim felt his stomach turn as the transport shuttle moved through space toward Station Omega 7. He had been a diplomat for 25 years, but this meeting made him more nervous than any before. The leather briefcase on his lap contained the most important documents humanity had ever prepared for alien contact. Inside were trade agreements worth billions of credits and technology-sharing deals that took Earth governments 6 months to approve. The shuttle pilot was a young woman named Ji-un who kept looking back at Dae-ho with worried eyes. She had heard the rumors about Vorthak soldiers and their hatred for humans. The purple-scaled aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall and carried weapons that could burn through metal walls. Most other species in the galaxy feared them and avoided their territory whenever possible. Dae-ho tried to calm his nerves by reading through his notes one more time. He had practiced his speech hundreds of times in front of mirrors and recording devices. The presentation would show how both humans and Vorthaks could become rich and powerful through working together. New trade routes would connect their star systems and create jobs for millions of beings. Medical research could help both species live longer, healthier lives. The station appeared on the viewing screen as they approached. Station Omega-7 was massive with rotating rings and docking bays that could hold ships the size of small cities. Thousands of aliens lived and worked there from dozens of different species. It was supposed to be neutral territory where all beings could meet safely to discuss important matters. As the shuttle docked, Dae-ho checked his appearance one final time. His dark blue diplomatic uniform was pressed perfectly, and his shoes were polished until they gleamed. The small translation device in his ear would help him understand the Vorthak language while allowing them to hear his words in their own tongue. Everything had to be perfect for this meeting to succeed. Ji-un wished him luck as he stepped off the shuttle carrying his precious briefcase. The station corridors were busy with aliens of all shapes and sizes going about their daily business. Some were tall and thin with multiple arms, while others were short and round with thick fur covering their bodies. None of them paid attention to the human diplomat walking among them. Dae-ho found the meeting room after asking directions from a helpful alien clerk. The chamber was large with a long table in the center and chairs designed to accommodate different body types. Large windows showed the stars and distant planets, while soft lighting made the room feel calm and peaceful. This was where diplomats from across the galaxy came to solve problems without violence. The Vorthak delegation was already waiting when he arrived. 5 massive aliens stood around the table wearing military uniforms covered in medals and rank insignia. Their purple scales gleamed under the lights and their yellow eyes watched every movement Dae-ho made. The largest one, who seemed to be their leader, had scars across his face from old battles. General Thex was the scarred alien commander, and he looked at Dae-ho like a predator studying its prey. In his mind, humans were weak creatures who had only learned to travel between stars by copying technology from superior species. Their peaceful nature was proof of cowardice, and their diplomatic efforts were signs of fear. He believed that showing mercy to such beings would make other species think the Vorthaks were going soft. Dae-ho bowed politely and introduced himself using the formal greeting he had learned from Vorthak cultural experts on Earth. He explained that he came with proposals that would benefit both of their peoples and hoped they could work together for a better future. The translator device worked perfectly, and he could see that the aliens understood every word he spoke. Setting his briefcase on the table, Dae-ho began his presentation with genuine excitement in his voice. He talked about new shipping routes that would cut travel time between systems by half. Human colonies produced rare metals that Vorthak industries needed, while alien worlds had energy sources that Earth desperately wanted. Trade would make both civilizations wealthy beyond imagination. The medical cooperation agreements were even more important than trade deals. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that killed millions of beings every year. Vorthak. Scientists had created surgical techniques that could repair injuries previously thought impossible to heal. By sharing knowledge, both species could save countless lives and reduce suffering throughout the galaxy. Cultural exchange programs would let young humans and Vorthaks learn from each other. Students could study on alien worlds and bring new ideas back to their home planets. Artists and musicians could create works that combined different traditions. Sports competitions could bring beings together in friendly rivalry instead of deadly combat. Dae-ho showed holographic displays of proposed space stations where humans and Vorthaks would work side by side. joint exploration missions could discover new worlds and map unknown regions of space. Scientific research teams could unlock secrets of the universe that neither species could solve alone. The possibilities for cooperation seemed endless and exciting. The Vorthak soldiers listened without showing any emotion on their reptilian faces. Their yellow eyes remained fixed on Daiho as he spoke, but gave no hint of what they were thinking. General Thex occasionally glanced at his subordinates, but never said a word during the entire presentation. The silence in the room felt heavy and uncomfortable. When Daiho finished speaking, he looked around the table, hopefully waiting for questions or comments. He had covered every detail of the proposed agreements and explained how implementation would work step by step. The benefits to both species were obvious and the risks were minimal. Surely these intelligent beings could see the wisdom in cooperation over conflict. General Thex stood slowly from his chair, towering over the human diplomat like a mountain of scaled muscle and bone. His massive hands rested on the table as he leaned forward, studying Daiho with cold, calculating eyes. The other Vorthak soldiers shifted in their seats and placed hands near their weapons in a subtle, threatening gesture. The alien general spoke for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was deep and harsh like grinding stone, and the translator made his words sound even more menacing. He told Daiho that the Vorthak Empire did not make deals with inferior species. Humans were nothing more than clever animals who had stumbled into space by accident. They deserved conquest, not cooperation. Daiho felt his heart sink as he realized the meeting was not going as planned. He tried to explain that both species had much to offer each other and that working together would benefit everyone involved. The galaxy was vast enough for all beings to prosper without fighting over territory or resources. Peace was always better than war for building lasting prosperity. But General Thex had already made his decision before the meeting even started. He reached for the plasma weapon on his belt and drew it in one smooth motion. The other Vorthak soldiers tensed, ready to support their commander in whatever action he chose to take. The peaceful diplomatic chamber suddenly felt like a trap with no way to escape. Without warning or hesitation, General Thex fired his weapon directly into Daiho Kim's chest. The plasma bolt burned through the diplomat uniform and flesh with horrible efficiency. The human ambassador fell backward against his chair, then slumped to the floor as his life drained away. His briefcase scattered papers across the room as he died alone and far from home. The Vorthak soldiers quickly destroyed all recording equipment and prepared to file their official report. They would claim the human had attacked first, and they were forced to defend themselves. In their arrogance, they believed other species would accept this obvious lie. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. Captain Boram Lee was sitting in the Deep Space Communications Center on Luna Base when the emergency signal came through the quantum relay network. She had been monitoring alien communications for 12 years and knew the difference between routine traffic and something important. The red priority indicator flashing on her screen meant someone was in serious trouble somewhere in the galaxy. The message was short, but it hit Boram like a physical blow to her chest. Ambassador Daiho Kim was dead. The Vorthak soldiers had murdered him during what was supposed to be a peaceful diplomatic meeting. The transmission came from Ji-un, the shuttle pilot, who had managed to escape the station before Vorthak forces could capture her. Her voice shook with fear and anger as she described what she had learned from station security footage. Boram immediately forwarded the message to Earth Defense Command while her hands trembled over the control panel. She had served as a fighter, pilot during the border conflicts with the Krulon Empire, and had seen plenty of combat. But this was different. This was cold-blooded murder of a man who came in peace with gifts and proposals for cooperation. The Vorthaks had answered humanity, extended hand with a plasma bolt to the chest. The news reached President Jinwoo Park within minutes at the Capitol building in New Geneva. The former military officer was in a meeting with agricultural ministers when his aide burst through the door with the emergency report. Jin Woo read the message twice to make sure he understood correctly, then dismissed everyone from the room, except his closest advisors. The time for peaceful solutions had ended. Admiral Hyejin Seo was attending a weapons testing demonstration when her personal communicator buzzed with the highest priority alert signal. She left the test range immediately and raced to the underground war room beneath Defense Command headquarters. The massive chamber was already filling with military personnel as word spread through the ranks that something terrible had happened in alien space. The holographic display in the center of the war room showed Vorthak territory marked in red across 17 star systems. Intelligence reports scrolled down the walls listing alien military assets and defensive positions that human spy satellites had been watching for decades. Every Vorthak colony world military base and fleet position was marked with precise coordinates and strength estimates. Jin-Woo Park arrived at the war room 30 minutes after receiving the news and found his senior staff already preparing response options. The faces around the table were grim but determined. These were men and women who had spent their careers preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Now they would implement plans that had been developed in secret for exactly this situation. The president looked at each of his advisors and asked for their honest assessment of the situation. Military Intelligence Director Kyung-Min Han stood up and activated a detailed tactical display. He explained that Vorthak forces were spread thin across their empire and were not expecting any human military response. Their intelligence services believed Earth government was too slow and bureaucratic to react quickly to provocation. Fleet Admiral Won Jae Kim outlined the human naval assets that could be deployed within hours. Ships that appeared to be conducting routine patrol missions were actually positioned to strike key Vorthak targets. Merchant vessels carried hidden weapons and military-grade engines. Even scientific research ships had enough firepower to level cities if necessary. Humanity had been preparing for this day while pretending to be peaceful explorers. The decision was unanimous among the leadership. The Vorthak Empire had chosen war when they murdered Ambassador Dae-ho Kim. They would learn that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice, not a weakness. When that choice was taken away, humans became the most dangerous species in known space. The galaxy would witness what Earth was truly capable of when pushed beyond all limits. President Park authorized Operation Thunderstrike exactly 2 hours and 37 minutes after receiving news of the ambassador death. Military commanders across human space received coded transmissions that activated battle plans they had memorized but hoped never to use. Supply depots that had been disguised as civilian facilities suddenly revealed their true purpose as weapons, and ammunition began moving toward staging areas. The news media was told only that Ambassador Kim had died in an accident during diplomatic negotiations. Government censors blocked all outgoing communications to prevent word from reaching Vorthak intelligence networks. As far as the aliens knew, their crime remained secret, and they had successfully intimidated humanity into submission. They had no idea that the largest military operation in galactic history was already moving against them. Captain Tae-hyun Park commanded a destroyer that had been patrolling the Vega sector for 6 months. His crew believed they were protecting human merchant shipping from pirates and raiders. When the operation orders came through encrypted channels, he gathered his senior officers in the briefing room and revealed their true mission. The ship weapons that had been sealed and marked as backup systems were actually the most advanced military hardware Earth had ever produced. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of ships throughout human space. Crews that thought they were conducting. Scientific surveys learned they were actually gathering intelligence on alien defenses. Soldiers who believed they were training for theoretical scenarios discovered they were rehearsing for real combat operations. The entire human military had been positioned and prepared for this moment while maintaining perfect operational security. Dr. So-Young Kim worked frantically in her weapons laboratory deep beneath the Martian surface. For 5 years, she had been developing theoretical weapons systems that military leaders hoped would never be needed, plasma disruptors that could burn through alien armor, gravity bombs that could crush enemy ships like tin cans, neural scramblers that would disable Vorthak nervous systems without killing them. Now these theoretical weapons were being loaded onto ships and prepared for combat deployment. The Vorthak Empire had made the greatest miscalculation in their long military history. They believed humans were weak because they chose negotiation over conquest. They failed to understand that Earth restraint came from strength, not fear. Humanity had the power to destroy entire civilizations, but chose instead to seek peaceful solutions. When that choice was removed by murder and betrayal, the galaxy would learn what humans had been holding back. General Thex and his soldiers celebrated their successful intimidation of the human species by drinking traditional Vorthak victory wine in the station cantina. They bragged to other aliens about how easily they had dealt with Earth diplomatic efforts. In their arrogance, they believed they had ended any possibility of human interference in Vorthak expansion plans. They had no idea that in less than 30 minutes human forces would begin the most devastating military campaign their empire had ever faced. Time was running out for the Vorthak Empire, and they did not even know it. Lieutenant Colonel Minho Jang received the activation code while eating lunch at his desk in the Rapid Response Division headquarters. The sequence of numbers and letters looked random to anyone who might intercept them, but they meant everything to Minho and his elite team of specialists. He had been waiting for this moment for 8 years while developing detailed battle plans for every known alien species in the galaxy. The Vorthak files were 3 inches thick and contained everything. Human intelligence had learned about alien military capabilities, weaknesses, and tactical preferences. Minho had studied every battle the purple-scaled warriors had ever fought and identified patterns in their strategies. They were aggressive fighters who relied on superior size and strength, but they were also predictable and slow to adapt when their standard tactics failed. Within 10 minutes of receiving his orders, Minho had assembled his core team of 12 officers in the secure briefing room. These men and women had spent years training for operations they hoped would never be necessary. They had memorized alien facility layouts, studied enemy equipment specifications, and rehearsed assault scenarios until every movement was automatic. Now their preparation would be tested in real combat. Captain Sujin Park commanded the intelligence-gathering team that had been posing as archaeological researchers in Vorthak territory for 3 years. Her people had excavated ancient ruins, while secretly mapping military installations and monitoring enemy communications. They carried scientific equipment that could also function as weapons and explosives when activated by remote signal. The Vorthak authorities never suspected that human scientists were actually gathering targeting data for future strikes. The activation signal reached Sujin team at their dig site on Vorthak colony world Kepler-4. They were working in trenches, near an ancient temple when their equipment began receiving coded transmissions. Without changing their behavior or showing any sign of alarm, they began converting their archaeological tools into military hardware. Ground-penetrating scanners became sensor jammers while sample analysis devices transformed into communication interceptors. Dr. So-Young Kim had been working 18-hour days in her laboratory since receiving the emergency authorization. Her team of weapons specialists was completing final tests on devices that had been purely theoretical until this moment. Plasma disruptors that could melt through Vorthak battle armor in seconds. Gravity bombs that would crush enemy ships by creating miniature black holes. Neural scramblers designed specifically to disrupt alien nervous systems without permanent damage. The weapons were loaded onto transport ships that had been waiting at hidden bases throughout human space. These vessels looked like ordinary cargo haulers, but carried military-grade engines and defensive systems. Their crews had been briefed on their true mission months earlier and were ready to deliver experimental weapons to combat units in record time. Every minute counted as the window for surprise attack grew smaller. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo Han stood before the massive tactical display in Deep Space Command, watching as human forces moved into position across 17 star systems. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols suddenly changed course toward predetermined coordinates. Merchant vessels dropped their cargo containers to expose hidden missile batteries and fighter launch bays. Even exploration ships revealed weapons that could level entire cities. The coordination required for simultaneous strikes across such a vast area was staggering. Communications had to be perfectly timed to prevent early detection by Vorthak monitoring stations. Supply chains that had been dormant for years suddenly activated to provide ammunition, fuel, and replacement parts. Personnel who thought they were civilian contractors learned they had actually been military reservists all along. Captain Taemin's son led a squad of soldiers who had been living undercover in the Vorthak capital city for 5 years. They operated a small trading post that sold human crafts and artwork to alien customers. The shop basement contained enough explosives to destroy 3 city blocks, along with weapons and equipment for a full military assault. Their Vorthak neighbors considered them harmless merchants who posed no threat to anyone. The signal to begin preparation phase reached Taemin team through their store communication system, disguised as a routine supply order from Earth. They activated security protocols and began arming devices they had planted throughout the city over years of careful planning. Government buildings, military headquarters, and communication centers would all be targeted simultaneously when the attack began. The aliens had no idea that death was literally living next door to them. Across Vorthak space, similar scenes were playing out as human sleeper agents revealed their true identities and began final preparations. Mechanics who had been repairing alien ships for years suddenly activated hidden programs that would cause critical systems to fail. Doctors treating Vorthak patients placed monitoring devices that could track military personnel movements. Even entertainment workers had been gathering intelligence while appearing to provide harmless services. The Vorthak military intelligence services had completely failed to detect the scope of human infiltration in their territory. They believed Earth lacked the resources and capability for large-scale espionage operations. Their racial prejudice against humans had blinded them to the possibility that the seemingly peaceful species possessed advanced military capabilities. This blindness would cost them everything. Admiral Hae-Jin Seo monitored the fleet status reports as hundreds of ships reported ready for combat operations. Vessels that had been scattered across human space were now converging on Vorthak positions with devastating firepower. The aliens would face coordinated assault from land, sea space, and cyber warfare simultaneously. No enemy in galactic history had ever been attacked so comprehensively. Dr. Young-Soo Kim worked desperately in the Cyber Warfare Center to complete final preparations for electronic assault on Vorthak computer networks. His team had spent 2 years secretly infiltrating alien communication systems and planting programs that would activate when triggered. Navigation systems would fail, leaving ships stranded between stars. Defense networks would turn against their own forces. Supply databases would be corrupted, causing massive shortages of critical materials. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. They had murdered Ambassador Dae-ho Kim, believing that humans were too weak and peaceful to seek revenge. In less than 1 hour, they would discover that Earth restraint had been a choice, not a limitation. When that choice was removed by treachery and violence, humans became the most dangerous predators in known space. General Fex was still celebrating his victory over human diplomacy when the first reports of unusual activity began reaching Vorthak command centers. Border patrol ships reported losing contact with monitoring stations. Communication networks experienced mysterious failures. Transport ships carrying military supplies went missing without explanation. The general dismissed these incidents as routine problems that would be resolved quickly. He had no idea that humanity had spent decades preparing for this exact situation. The murder of their ambassador had not caught them by surprise. It had triggered the most comprehensive military response in galactic history. In 37 minutes, the Vorthak Empire would begin dying, and General Thex would learn the true cost of his arrogance. News of humanity devastating counterattacks spread throughout galactic civilization faster than light-speed communication networks could carry it. Within hours, every major government in known space was receiving reports from refugees trading ships and intelligence services about the complete destruction of Vorthak military power. Species that had dismissed humans as peaceful weaklings suddenly realized they had fundamentally misunderstood Earth's true nature. Ambassador Chen Wei-Liu stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime. Representatives from 47 different civilizations filled the massive chamber, their various forms of eyes, tentacles, and sensory organs all focused on the human diplomat. The air translation systems struggled to keep up as dozens of alien languages filled the space with worried chatter and fearful speculation. Chen Wei activated the holographic display system and began his presentation with calm, professional determination. The images showed Vorthak ships burning in space, their mighty defense stations reduced to twisted metal, and their once proud military forces surrendering to human soldiers. The speed and coordination of the assault demonstrated planning and capabilities that terrified representatives who thought they understood galactic power structures. The Zentari Federation ambassador stood on his 6 legs and demanded to know how humans had managed to hide such massive military preparations from galactic intelligence services. His insectoid features could not hide the fear in his compound eyes as he contemplated what other secrets Earth might be concealing. If humanity could destroy the Vorthak Empire so easily, what did that mean for everyone else's security? Chen Wei explained humanity's position with words that carried weight throughout the chamber. Earth had not started this war, but they would finish it completely and decisively. Any species that provided sanctuary to Vorthak military forces would be considered hostile to human interests. Any government that offered aid to the murderers of Ambassador Dae-Ho Kim would face the same fate as those who had pulled the trigger. The Krulon Empire representative demanded proof that humans would limit their military actions to Vorthak targets. His people had fought border conflicts with Earth forces for decades and knew something about human combat capabilities, but even they were shocked by the scope of the current campaign. The purple-scaled aliens had possessed one of the strongest militaries in the galaxy, and humanity had crushed them in less than a day. Chen Wei's response sent chills through every delegate in the assembly hall. He calmly listed the locations of military installations belonging to every major power in the galaxy, along with detailed assessments of their defensive capabilities and strategic weaknesses. Human intelligence services had been watching everyone, not just the Vorthaks. Earth knew exactly how to destroy any civilization that chose to become their enemy. The surviving Vorthak government in exile sent desperate messages to anyone who would listen, begging for military assistance against the human assault. Admiral Vex had escaped the destruction of his home fleet and was attempting to rally support from species that had previously feared Vorthak expansion. Now, he found himself in the humiliating position of pleading for protection from beings he had once considered inferior. The response from potential allies was swift and unanimous. No government in the galaxy was willing to risk human retaliation by harboring Vorthak refugees or providing military support. The demonstration of Earth capabilities had convinced everyone that neutrality was the only safe policy. Even species that had territorial disputes with humanity quickly moved to resolve their differences through peaceful negotiation. Chancellor Zokar of the Hegemony Worlds addressed the council chamber with trembling voice appendages. His civilization controlled resource-rich systems that both humans and Vorthaks had shown interest in claiming. Now he faced the terrifying possibility that Earth might decide his people posed a threat that needed to be eliminated. The military power that had just destroyed the Vorthak Empire could easily sweep away his own forces. Chen Wei assured the Chancellor that humanity had no territorial ambitions beyond securing justice for their murdered diplomat. Earth sought trade partnerships and peaceful coexistence with all species that respected human sovereignty and diplomatic immunity. The galaxy was vast enough for everyone to prosper without conflict if civilizations chose cooperation over conquest. Deep space monitoring stations detected the final phase of the human campaign as Admiral Won-jae Kim tracked the last Vorthak, fleet remnants to their hiding place in the Kepler Nebula. The dense gas clouds that the aliens hoped would conceal their movements proved useless against sensor technology that could penetrate any natural barrier. Human ships materialized from the swirling mists like predators emerging from a fog. Captain Sojin Park commanded the lead destroyer as it closed with the desperate Vorthak survivors. The alien ships were damaged and low on fuel after days of running from human pursuit forces. Their crews had lost all hope of victory and were simply trying to escape with their lives from an enemy they could no longer understand or fight effectively. Chiawa. Final battle lasted only minutes as overwhelming human firepower eliminated the last organized Vorthak resistance. Admiral Vex chose to go down with his flagship rather than face capture and trial for war crimes. His final transmission was a warning to other species about underestimating human military capabilities. The lesson came too late to save his empire, but might prevent other civilizations from making similar mistakes. Representatives of minor powers throughout the galaxy began requesting immediate diplomatic meetings with human officials. Species that had never shown interest in Earth suddenly wanted to establish trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense treaties. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that everyone needed to recalibrate their foreign policies. Dr. Min Jung Kim led a team of political analysts studying the galactic response to humanity military demonstration. Her report showed that 3 major conflicts between alien species had ended within days as governments focused on reassessing their security in light of Earth capabilities. The human campaign against the Vorthaks had inadvertently created the most peaceful period in galactic history. The economic implications were equally dramatic as alien governments competed to offer favorable trade deals to human corporations. Resources that had been difficult for Earth to obtain suddenly became available at reasonable prices. Technology transfers that had been blocked by Vorthak influence were approved immediately. Humanity's newfound military reputation was proving valuable in ways beyond simple security. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo Han received reports from across human space showing massive increases in diplomatic contact requests from alien civilizations. Species that had maintained minimal relations with Earth for decades were suddenly eager to establish closer ties. The demonstration of human military power had earned respect but also fear throughout the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire collapse created power vacuums in 17 star systems that needed to be filled by someone. Human forces occupied key strategic positions to prevent chaos, but Earth leadership made it clear they had no intention of establishing permanent colonies in former alien territory. Instead, they began negotiations with neutral species about assuming administrative control over Vorthak worlds. Captain Young-Ho Park led humanitarian missions to Vorthak civilian populations who had been abandoned by their military leaders. Human medical teams provided aid to alien refugees, while Earth engineers worked to restore basic services that had been disrupted by the fighting. The contrast between human military efficiency and their compassionate treatment of non-combatants impressed observers throughout the galaxy. News services across dozens of worlds struggled to explain how humanity had hidden such massive military capabilities while maintaining their peaceful reputation. Intelligence agencies that prided themselves on understanding galactic affairs found themselves completely restructuring their assessments of Earth's strategic position. The humans had been underestimated by everyone, including their allies. The lesson was clear to every civilization with the intelligence to understand it. Humanity preferred peace and cooperation, but possessed the means to wage total war when their hand was forced. Earth restraint had been a choice based on strength, not a limitation caused by weakness. Any species foolish enough to test that restraint would face the same fate as the Vorthak Empire. 6 months later, Ambassador Sujin Park stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council, representing a humanity that could no longer be ignored or dismissed. The war had lasted only 3 weeks, but it had fundamentally changed the balance of power throughout known space. Earth's military might was now recognized and respected by every civilization in the galaxy. The former Vorthak territories had been divided among species that had remained neutral during the conflict. Humanity claimed no new worlds for itself, instead focusing on establishing permanent monitoring stations to prevent future aggressions. The message was clear: Earth sought peace, but was prepared for war at any moment. Dr. Young-Ho Kim established the Diplomatic Protection Corps, ensuring that no human ambassador would ever again face the fate of Dae-Ho Kim. Every diplomatic mission now traveled with sufficient military escort to deter potential attackers. Humanity's peaceful intentions were backed by undeniable strength. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about humanity. They were indeed peaceful by choice, preferring negotiation to conquest. However, when that choice was removed, when their people were murdered while seeking peace, humans became the most dangerous species in known space. Their restraint was not weakness but wisdom, their diplomacy not cowardice but strength. General Hae Young-song addressed the graduating class of the Galactic Military Academy, speaking to beings from dozens of different worlds. She reminded them that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in choosing not to when victory was certain. Humanity had proven both capabilities, and the galaxy was safer because of their example. The memorial to Ambassador Dae-Ho Kim stood in the center of New Geneva, Earth's diplomatic capital. His sacrifice had not been in vain. It had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their military might, but their unwavering commitment to justice and their refusal to allow evil to go unpunished.